Why villains are more interesting than heroes. The debate over whether villains are more interesting than heroes is a long-standing one, and it often boils down to the complexity, motivations, and psychological depth that villains bring to a story. While heroes are typically the moral anchors of a narrative, villains often steal the spotlight because they challenge norms, embody ambiguity, and reflect the darker aspects of human nature. Here's a detailed exploration of why villains are often perceived as more compelling than heroes. Complexity and depth. Moral ambiguity. Villains are rarely purely evil. They often operate in shades of grey. Their motivations can be deeply personal, such as revenge, loss, or a desire for power, making them relatable on some level. For example, Thanos in Avengers. Infinity War believes he is saving the universe by eliminating half of its population, which adds layers to his character. Backstory. Villains often have tragic or intricate backstories that explain their descent into darkness. This makes them more three-dimensional and human. For instance, Darth Vader's transformation from Anakin Skywalker to a Sith Lord is rooted in fear, love, and betrayal, making him one of the most iconic characters in cinema. Flaws and vulnerabilities. Unlike heroes who are often idealized, villains are allowed to be flawed, conflicted, and even self-destructive. These imperfections make them more relatable and intriguing. Freedom to break rules. Unconstrained by morality, villains are not bound by societal norms or moral codes, which gives them the freedom to act in ways that heroes cannot. This unpredictability makes them exciting to watch. The Joker in The Dark Knight is a prime example. His chaotic nature and lack of a clear motive keep audiences on edge. Creative methods. Villains often employ unconventional and imaginative strategies to achieve their goals, which can be more entertaining than the straightforward, principled approach of heroes. Loki's cunning and trickery in the Marvel Cinematic Universe make him a fan favorite. Psychological fascination. Exploration of darkness. Villains allow audiences to explore the darker aspects of human psychology, greed, envy, anger, and ambition, in a safe, fictional context. Characters like Hannibal Lecter, The Silence of the Lambs, fascinate us because they embody the extremes of human behavior. Charisma and charm. Many villains are charismatic and intelligent, which makes them captivating despite their evil deeds. Characters like Killmonger, Black Panther, or Cersei Lannister, Game of Thrones, command attention because of their wit, confidence, and strategic brilliance. Challenging the status quo. Questioning morality. Villains often force heroes and audiences to question their own beliefs and values. For example, Magneto in X-Men challenges the idea of peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, arguing that violence is necessary for survival. Subverting expectations. Villains can disrupt traditional narratives, making stories less predictable and more engaging. Their actions often drive the plot forward, creating tension and conflict that keep audiences invested. Relatability and sympathy. Humanizing flaws. Many villains are driven by emotions like love, fear, or a desire for justice, even if their methods are extreme. This makes them more relatable than heroes, who often seem too perfect or selfless. Eric Killmonger's desire to fight racial oppression resonates with many viewers, even if his methods are violent. Tragic figures. Some villains are tragic figures who were once good, but were corrupted by circumstances. This duality makes them more compelling than heroes who remain steadfast in their morality. Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side is a classic example of this trope. Narrative function, driving conflict. Villains are essential to creating conflict, which is the backbone of any story. Without a compelling antagonist, the hero's journey would lack tension and stakes. A well-written villain elevates the entire narrative. Mirroring the hero. Villains often serve as dark reflections of the hero, highlighting their strengths and weaknesses. This dynamic adds depth to both characters. For example, Batman and the Joker represent order versus chaos, and their rivalry is central to the story. Cultural and social commentary. Reflecting real-world issues, villains can embody societal fears, critiques, or anxieties. For instance, the rise of authoritarian villains in media often reflects concerns about power and control in the real world. Challenging heroes. Villains force heroes to grow and adapt, making the story more dynamic. They push heroes to their limits, revealing new dimensions of their character. Memorability. Iconic traits. Villains often have distinctive traits, appearance, speech, or mannerisms that make them unforgettable. Think of Darth Vader's breathing, the Joker's laugh, or Voldemort's snake-like features. Cultural impact. Some villains transcend their stories to become cultural symbols. Characters like Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and Freddy Krueger have become ingrained in popular culture. Conclusion. While heroes are essential for providing hope and inspiration, villains are often the ones who make stories unforgettable. Their complexity, freedom, and psychological depth allow them to challenge both the hero and the audience, creating richer, more engaging narratives. Ultimately, villains remind us that the line between good and evil is often blurred, and that understanding the darker aspects of humanity can be just as important as celebrating its virtues. This is why villains frequently steal the spotlight and remain etched in our memories long after the story ends.